Lisa with Office Centers. Want to welcome all of you here at our St. Louis Park location, as well as our other 5 locations. Woodbury, the doors are open. You have to come check us out. So now we have a total of 6. And love to see all of your faces at all of them. We are going to we are in store for an awesome presentation today, and I'm thrilled to have an opportunity to present to you one of our very valued members, as well as an awesome speaker, Robb Breding. Robb has over 25 years of experience. No, 25?
Well, I'm not that old.
I was going to say 25 years of experience developing and leading teams, both as a corporate executive for a large retail chain and as the co-founder and president of a wireless retail company with over 50 locations in 5 states. Wow.
Yeah, that's what I used to do.
Okay. Now as the founder and chief evangelist, I like that, for Robb Advisory Group, Mr. Breding works with his business owners and top leaders to increase their effectiveness and work in life. He's been married to his beautiful bride, Pam, for 30 years, 2 amazing daughters, and 1 very special grandson. With that, we're going to welcome Robb, and now we get to hear him talk about integrated leadership and creating impact that matters. Are we going to woohoo one more time and welcome him?
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you so much. Wow.
Thank you.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to talking to this group, and so Lisa called me a speaker, but I really like to interact and work with you. So I'm not used to. So hopefully you folks out there can also. You can't raise your hand, but we can interact and ask questions throughout the presentation. But today you've got an outline in front of you there. We're going to go through that outline. There's a place for you to take some notes right away. There's also on the back side, I always give a recommended reading list. So those are my favorite books. I always think that's always fun to kind of compare and see if there's some books that we both read. Of course, that's not the entire list, but we're going to talk about personal development a little bit today, and so that's a big part of that, right? And so you've got a handout, you've got a chair, you've got some food, so we'll get started. And so there's basically 3 objectives that I have today, and that is, the first one is I want to kind of disrupt your thinking about leadership and about leadership development in general, and get you thinking maybe in a little bit different way about how it's developed and how it's applied within your lives, okay? Secondly, I want to introduce the concept of integrated leadership, which is I don't think I coined the term. I haven't heard it really used in those 2 words together, but I'm going to talk about that concept as I see it. And then lastly, I'm going to leave you with a practical model for improvement. So not only am I going to tell you about kind of what this idea that I have about how we can create some more impact in our lives, but also give you some practical things to walk away with as a way to apply that to your life. That's always important, right? So with that, I'm going to ask you a question. So if I was to have you introduce yourself, and I'm not going to, okay, I won't put anybody in the spot, but if you were going to give an introduction of yourself, what would that introduction include? Okay, and you're on your handout, there's a place for you to write. Now this is where people will start, covering their paper maybe a little bit. We'll see. But what I want you to think is, what's the first thing that popped into your mind? Okay, I'm going to tell somebody about me. What am I going to say? Okay, what's the first thing I'm going to tell them? What's the second thing? What are some other things that I might say? If I have time to think about it, I might order it differently, right? If I just have to spit it out and say it, what's the first thing I'm going to tell somebody about it? And so while you're thinking about that, I'm just going to share with you a little bit about me. Okay, so I live in Shakopee. You already mentioned I have a beautiful wife of 31 years, actually. So we've been married a long time. We were married when we were just kids, and which is really true. I turned 19 and got married a week later, and we made it. The interesting thing about our daughters is they're 18 years apart. I have a 25-year-old, and I have a 7-year-old at home. So that's kind of an interesting fact. And you also mentioned my grandson. Well, my grandson was born on Cinco de Mayo. And if you met my daughter, that's perfect, okay? And they are about to embark on a journey across the country in a bus. And they're building out this kind of retired bus from the community. So that's a little bit about my family. I think she picked up a little bit of my entrepreneurial spirit. She's kind of a free spirit, my daughter. Haley. My 7-year-old's going in the 2nd grade. Another thing, I went to school, initially set out to was going to be a youth pastor. I had kind of a troubled youth, and then I switched to psychology, and then of course I started working at Sears, and that retail got into my blood, and so that's kind of a little bit about my background. I started my own business with my brother in 1999, and we grew that business to, as you mentioned, 50 locations, and sold it in 2014. And now I'm a consultant and working with peer groups at Robb Advisory Group. So I work with business leaders in a peer setting and in a one-on-one setting to help them increase impact in their life. So the talk that I'm giving today is kind of very congruent with that, okay? How are those lists coming? I know you're interested. So, and another thing about me is that I attend church at River Valley Church, which is one of the largest churches in the cities. I think we have 9 campuses and almost 20,000 members, and it's a fun place to go to church in Shakopee. That's really where I spend my time in the community. My daughter also goes to a private school, so that community is a big part of our lives, especially as she's getting older now. It's called Living Hope. It's down in it's a little Lutheran school, and that's been really fun because our other daughter went to public school, which was a very different experience in terms of community. And so that's kind of what we do. I have lots of hobbies, but lately, since I'm starting something new, right, I've made a transition in my life. I don't spend a lot of time on them, but I do like to golf, and I do like to fish, and I do like to hunt. And my 7-year-old, of course, takes up a lot of our time, and she's getting now involved in sports, right? Okay, so that's my bio, right? So hopefully you guys have thought about yours, okay? I know it's interesting to listen to mine, but I want you to think about yours, okay? All right, well, the next thing is then, let me ask you then another question. So if someone asked you to list the defining moments in your life, what would you tell them they are? Okay, those real watershed moments, those moments when you know something really shifted, something really pivoted, or it really had an impact on you. Guess what? I'm going to go through mine, but I'd like you to think about yours as I'm doing that, okay? And it's interesting. One is the number. First of all, my number is pretty big size for only being 50 years old. Okay, so you know if you think about it, how often can you really have that big impact moment in your life? It does happen quite often, actually. I don't know why we expect life to go smooth. It's really much like this. And so for me, I'm going all the way back to kid. Okay, so when I was 6 years old, my dad had a nervous breakdown. There was 5 kids in our family, and it blew up our world. Okay, mental illness hit our family. So as a result of that, Mom and Dad got divorced when I was 10. And that was really not because my mom didn't love my dad or my dad didn't love my mom, but we couldn't live with Dad in the house anymore because he wouldn't take his medication. So thus, my youth, like I explained, was very troubled. I kind of launched out at age 10, that happened. And so I got into drugs and alcohol and all those kinds of things. But those 2 things, my dad's mental illness and my mom and dad's divorce, were big watershed moments for me as a kid. At 15, okay, a different kind of trajectory. Those are kind of negative, right? A positive thing. I met Jesus Christ. I became a Christian. Went through drug and alcohol treatment. and inside of that process, I met the Lord. And so that was a big impact, a big trajectory changer of my life. The next one was when I met my wife, Pam. I was on my 17th birthday. What a great birthday present, right? And we married her 2 years later. That's another big watershed moment, right? Big change in my life. The birth of my first daughter. You guys probably write that one down too, right? When your first child is born, that's a big watershed, and our lives changed dramatically again. Okay, and then the birth of my business. Started my business with my brother, left Sears. I was at a great career. I was identified as a high potential. I was going to be the CEO. Okay, and I left that. Thank goodness, right? To go and start, Shock City Cellular, which was this wireless phone company with my brother. That was a big watershed moment. We started it on credit cards. Okay, we had inventory and he had a business, so I won't go into all the details, but it was a big risk that we took. Okay. The next one is adopted my second daughter. We adopted her, so we went through that adoption process. That was a real life changer. Not just because my daughter came into our life, but just going through that process with the birth mother and that whole thing, okay? And then the death of my business, okay, at age 46. I got my ages listed here. I'm not telling you what they are, but that was age 46. So my business died. I say it died, I sold it, but it died, okay? You want to talk about kind of a letdown, right? You go from being the top of the world to my inbox is empty and where are all my friends? You know what I mean? Because I was so consumed by my work and my business. it really kind of was a wake-up call in terms of where my life balance was at, because so much of me was tied up in that business. Okay, that was another one. So another one was, okay, so then right after that, my wife is diagnosed with breast cancer, okay? Within like 6 months of me selling my business. So of course, my pity party or whatever, and whatever I was feeling was kind of behind me now. Now I had to think about Pam, and so I decided to take some time and do some caregiving, and well, that was quite an experience. She chemotherapy, radiation, and mastectomies, you know, very serious case. A year of hell, they call it, and they burn you, poison you, and cut you up. Okay, that's basically the treatment method. So I helped my wife through that. She was hospitalized a couple of times. On the other side of that, the next watershed happened with her again, where she developed heart failure. And the way I list this here is that heart failure, she died, okay, she went into cardiac arrest. She was actually dead for a short period of time. But then her miraculous recovery was also part of that. So it was also the watershed of the, you know, over the next 6 months, we went from them telling us she needed a heart transplant, you know, 30 days in the ICU at U of M, to her heart functions normal today. So that's a real praise, right? But a big watershed thing in my life. And then I became a grandpa, okay? I told you that on Secret Mind. That's my latest one. Okay, so how many of you have a list there? You got one? I know you probably didn't write it down because I'm telling you my story, but hopefully you were thinking about, oh yeah, that happened to me, or that's similar to my situation, okay? And so what I want to ask you is, what stands out on these lists to you? My list, your list, what kind of?
About people.
Okay.
That's mine.
Yeah, so it's people-centric, okay? What else? Go ahead.
Resilience.
Okay, resilience.
Because
Right.
you gotta keep moving.
Yeah, adversity, right? So you're going through adversity.
I can identify with a lot of your stuff, but you just gotta keep going.
Yeah, sure.
A lot of it's around like your employment, your jobs, how things find and go. And
Yeah, there was a part of it, right, that was involved in my vocation. But if I think if I add them up, it's probably about 10 or 20% of the list. I don't know about yours.
it defines who you are and what makes you up.
Right. That's true, right? It kind of makes you who you are. And how many of you like adversity? You like it when things go wrong. You know, we don't, right? But is it a necessary part of our development? I think it probably is. The other thing about the exercise of doing that is, how does it help you to form? Because we're talking. Remember what the name of the talk is make impact that matters. So how does it help you to form for yourselves what does really matter to you? Does it help to inform that, your biography? You talk about yourself and remember that first thing you said, that gives you a little bit idea of your priorities, maybe how they currently are. I mean, if we're really honest with ourselves, right? Okay. And then also all these watershed moments and how I describe them and you know, what it really matters. Obviously, the biggest impacts were like you said, around people, right? So and then last question. So knowing what now matters, okay, so you've kind of gone through this exercise. How does your opinion about your leadership skill and your ability to lead and be a leader and how you're developing that, does your perspective change on how you might go about doing that based on knowing what now is really important to you? Does that maybe change it a little bit? Okay. I got a couple of points, and I think I might have wrote those on your outline. I'm not sure if I did. Yeah, I did. So the points are, it is in these relationships, in these critical times, that leadership does really matter, right? It's when we're hit with it. Now it's like, okay, step up. We got to do something here. So we need to be prepared. And most of this list, is only a small fraction of final involved work. We've already talked about that. And then what matters cuts across all areas of life, not just the work area, but across family, across your personal health, across community, and into all those areas. And so that kind of sets the stage, okay, for this idea of, okay, well, great. So now I kind of getting a better feel, or maybe, I mean, you guys, I'm not saying you didn't know what mattered to you before we just had this conversation, but helping you to kind of dial it in a little bit. And now I'd like to share with you a little bit about what I call like integrated leadership development and how that's developed. And so in your outlines here, I'm sorry I didn't leave you a lot of room, but first of all, I want to ask, who has a good definition of leadership? Who's got a good one that they like to, anybody got one? You had to define the word. I've got one written down, but I just thought maybe somebody, no? Okay, well, here we go. So some synonyms, first of all: authoritativeness, influence, command, effectiveness, sway, clout. Those are synonyms. And then I'm a John Maxwell fan, maybe it'll date me, but John Maxwell to me still is the most succinct communicator around this topic of leadership that I've ever heard. He's just got a great way of boiling things down. And his definition is leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. So it's just influence. And then being a great leader is all about having a genuine willingness and a true commitment to lead others to achieve a common vision and goal through positive influence. No leader can ever achieve anything great or long-lasting alone. And that's a fact, right? I mean, we know that. We learn that throughout life, that we think we can, the rugged individualism of America is really just a myth. It does take a lot of people, and the better we get at integrating those people in our lives and leading those folks, the more impact that we can have, right? And the more that we can do. So integrated leadership, and this is my idea, most of this is really, I think, if you're going to develop those things, it has to happen in 3 ways. That you don't just go to a leadership seminar to become a better leader, okay? There's some foundational things, and I've listed them there. The 3 areas of development are personal health, okay? We'll talk about that. They are relational health. We don't want to talk about that, but we need to. And the last one is leadership acumen, and that's how you utilize those healthy aspects of yourselves to create impact or influence, okay? And then the 4 areas of life, and I kind of stole this from this word professor that I'll tell you about later, but I like you could look up in any books that you want to about what are the areas of life. Okay, well, I like his. It's work, it's family, it's community, and it's me. Those are the 4 different areas that I'm kind of functioning in, and I think that's well defined.
There's a lot more.
Well, there is, but these are broader categories, right? Like even in my coaching, I'll go through 10. Yeah, right.
It's arbitrary.
Yeah, right. It is arbitrary, but I like the idea that you can kind of put everything into those things. Like I told you, I put church into the community category. I'm not that my faith is there, because on the personal side, I have a mind, body, and soul, right? So my soul is there. So that would be an example. So basically, this is something I'd like to coin. Integrated leadership is a healthy person engaged in right and healthy relationships to positively influence others in accomplishing something that matters. Okay, that's what integrated leadership is. And so first question is how we'll talk about personal health first of all, okay? So that's the first leg. So how would you define personal health? I mean, what goes into personal health?
Eating the right things.
Okay, so eating right, that's important.
Exercise.
Exercise, okay.
Pizza.
Yeah, as we chow pizza down, right?
Yeah.
What else?
Self-care and stuff,
Like self-care.
making sure you get enough sleep, making
Oh,
sure you
okay,
get
yeah.
right, all that, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Mental and spiritual clarity.
Okay, I like that. Yep, yeah. So isn't part of our personal health, we got to get these neurons firing, right? We got to be reading. We've got to be, have a growth mindset, right, versus a fixed mindset. What else?
It's funny about pampering yourself. Like ladies go and get their hair done, or men go get a massage, or
Sure.
things like that. Like
Yeah.
help your health.
Sure. Great. Okay, well, that's a good list, and I've got some things here that I wanted to share with you, and I like to break it down mind, body, and soul in terms of like how you're going to develop it. So if you could think about that, that makes it easy, right? It's 3 bullet points. Are there more? I don't know your name, sir. What's your name? Over here. What was your name?
Well, John.
Yeah. So I mean, it could be more, right? But I think mind, body, and
fitness,
soul.
Mind, spiritual,
Yeah.
emotional.
Yeah. Right.
You can go on and on.
Yeah, sure. And I put, under the mind category, I put both, we need to be educated, we need to keep growing in what we know, in our knowledge, in our wisdom, is what's a really hot topic right now in terms of leadership and team development. What is it right now? It's not IQ, but it's EQ, right? Yeah, so emotional intelligence and what goes into that. I'm telling you, it's a difficult one in terms of self-development. It requires you to get around others so that you can become more self-aware and so that you can actually become vulnerable, right? Vulnerability and those kinds of things that go into that.
Well, and also you mentioned the fixed versus open mindset.
Yes.
And that's that Carol Dweck.
Yeah, that is
Yeah.
Carol Dweck. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even how many paradigms do we sit in? And when I said disrupt your thinking, right? I mean, what's Tim Ferriss, right? He's the disruptor, or some of these people out there. Well, some of these people are crazy, but maybe it does get you to think about things in different ways. If you have kids, Big Hero 6 is a movie that Disney put out. And in the movie, this hero is his name. He's brilliant. He's this genius kid. And his brother, he's trying to solve this problem and create something new. And his brother picked him up by the legs and holds him upside down, right? And so that he could see something from a different perspective. And then boom, he had the idea and he makes a thing. It's kind of like that. It's a good analogy if you haven't seen the movie, of course. It's terrible. But anyway, so emotional intelligence. And I say the way you feel mentally and emotionally. Somebody mentioned getting enough sleep, right? Somebody meant, that's a physical thing, but it affects our mental capabilities in our mind, right? We think we're Superman or something, and we don't need to sleep. There's lots of things that go into mental clarity. Okay, the next one is the body. So everybody, that was the first thing that came out when we talked about self, because we all struggle with it, right? We all want to be healthier. We live in a culture that doesn't really help us along too much, right? Because we're pleasure, it's kind of eating is fun. It's an entertainment versus a necessity. But that I just list as a condition of your body. Some things you can't help, right? We have genetic components that go into that. Some of us have a higher IQ than others. Is that a belief that can make you stop thinking, right? Like, okay, I think I'm only so smart, right? Or some of those kinds of things that we think are genetic. Are they? Aren't they? Malcolm Gladwell would disagree, right?
The problem with IQ is it's not correlated to what we consider success.
Yeah, right.
That's,
Yeah, sure.
So what are you going to do with it?
Well, but people think of it as a genetic thing. You know what I mean? Well, is it really? Or is our physical ability, people that excel in that as an athlete, is that something? What is our natural propensities? And just becoming comfortable with where we're at and finding a good cadence there. And lastly, the soul part of it, spiritual health. I define this as this condition of your soul. It's having a clear worldview that you understand and kind of guides your life, right? Have you ever met somebody that doesn't know what they believe? I mean, it is hard to live like that because you're constantly, there's no rudder. And to me, the soul part of it, that's what that is. It's meaning, it's your moral values, your ethics, and some foundation of that, wherever that comes from. So there you go. So personal healthy, right? So there's some ideas around that. We're going to talk about practically here in a little bit about that. The next one is relational health. Okay, this is a topic we could talk for the next 10 days on, right? Okay, so I want to give you 3 categories of relationships. Okay, and again, there might be 10, but I'm going to give you 3. And to me, it's measured by the condition of these various types of relationships. So how healthy am I? The first one is significant relationships. Okay. They exist across the different planes of our life. You can guess what they are, right? These close relationships that we have, obviously our wife, our children, but at work, it's our close workmates. At home, in the community, it might be our good friends, close friends. These significant relationships and the health of those relationships really can have an impact on our ability to lead and ability to be effective, I guess you would say. The next one I call direct relationships. Maybe these are people that work for you. Maybe these are people that you interact with your family. Maybe it's your uncle in your family or your cousin. They're people you know, but they're not intimately involved with you, but you do influence them. You have influence on them, they influence you. Those I'm calling direct relationships. And then lastly, peripheral relationships. And peripheral relationships I would say, maybe the best way to describe that is your image or your persona, or really, your public who you are. You know what I mean? What people might think of you that don't know you well, and then how you might think of them. Okay, so there are some mores and things that you might have in your head about people, how they look, or you know what I mean. That's the kind of relationship in this periphery that you might have, right? Some of us are cynical. Some of us think everybody's naturally good. Some of us think everybody's naturally evil. You know what I mean? Some of those peripheral things. Okay, so how would you define then within those different areas relational health? What are some components of relational health? First of all, in your significant relationships. How do you what means that they're healthy? Huh?
Like communication?
Yeah, so you communicate well. That's really good, right? Like I can talk to you. I feel free to say what I'm going to say, right? And I hear what you're saying. I'm listening. The communication is going on. That's really important. What else?
Communicate often.
Yeah, so the amount of communication that we have.
Right, I mean, you don't wait a year to talk to someone, you're talking to them all the time.
And maybe that helps put them in a different level, right? Depending on, what you're working on. If
Well,
it's a
you're
significant
calling it
relationship.
significant, so.
Yeah. And the reason I want to kind of categorize them is that later on you're going to see in the practical part of things that we need to prioritize to be able to work on this stuff, right? And we need to spend time, like you said, with the people that we care about. We better spend time with them, right? So time is a very important component. What else? What else defines a healthy relationship?
Willing to listen.
Okay.
It's a huge thing. If you don't listen to your friends and family, then there's no relationship.
Okay. Good. Does anybody think that there's a productivity component maybe to a relationship? Maybe that's just why are we related to each other? Do we have a meaning? Do we have a purpose? Are we doing something? Okay, my wife and I were raising kids, right? We're trying to get these kids together. That's one of our main purposes. We're supporting each other, right? Maybe we're having an impact on another couple or in the community, right? Maybe Pam's supporting me at work. They have a purpose, right? These relationships have purpose. They have meaning. That's an important thing, right? That I think a health component. If there is no purpose, you might start to question: is this a healthy relationship, right? Okay, and I'll ask the question, but we won't go for too long on this one. But let's learn some negatives. What are some signs that I'm in a bad? Usually, everybody's like, no communication, right? Yeah, exactly. Go out in the garage, right? If you're married or at work, you just kind of avoid each other or whatever it is. So good. Okay, so you get it, right?
Poor behavior.
Poor behavior. Okay. Not respectful, right?
Exactly.
You're not treating people right, and that's where that periphery comes in. I think if you have a value that people are valuable and precious, then we should treat the peripheral relationships just as well as we do our really significant relationships. That's a development thing, right? We don't naturally do that. It takes a little bit of effort to be nice. Right? It does. Yeah. Okay. So now we know we need to be healthy personally. We know we need to be healthy in our relationships. Now we can talk about leadership acumen. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but I know I've got some folks in the room that's near and dear to your hearts. So what is leadership acumen? What is that? What does the word acumen mean? Because that's a word that's thrown around a lot, right? You hear it a lot.
I had to look it up. It's depth of perception.
Okay, depth of perception.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I defined it a little differently. Maybe which dictionary is that one?
I just looked it up.
Okay, let's Google. It's got to be right.
It's probably wiki.
Wiki. Yeah, wiki. Yeah, that's a good story. Well, I don't know. To me, leadership. So depth of perception. So it's like you have a deep knowledge of it, right? A deep understanding. But to me, it's also a practical thing. It's also your ability to take all these different, your healthiness as a person, your healthiness in your relationships, and some skill to utilize that to create impact and produce something, and to be more effective as a person. And when I say effective, that's a relative term, right? How do we define effectiveness? A lot of times that's defined from outside ourselves. But once we understand what matters to us, we can start to self-evaluate that, right? Like, am I as effective as I want to be? Did I have as much impact as I wanted to have? Okay, and so your ability to learn skills and ideas and have wisdom around how to interact. And again, these aren't in linear silos, right? These are all like amalgamated together, because leadership acumen means that I know how to use my healthiness and my healthy relationships in such a way that I become a very good leader, right? Like, I can lead well and I can create a lot of impact because I'm influencing a lot of different people, right? In a good way, hopefully, to produce something. I always put that in there because, leadership to create, I don't know, whatever, pick your evil thing is not, leadership in my mind. That's another thing. So, okay. So, and I'm on purpose not going to spend a lot of time. I'm not going to go through 21 principles. You can read books on what those are. You'll see that a lot of it is about your personal health and your relational health. But acumen means and how you can kind of synthesize that into utilizing that in your daily life. Okay. Integrated leadership, of course, means that we're going to do that not just at work. We're going to lead our families in a dynamic and thoughtful way. We're going to do that in our community. We're going to be thoughtful about the things that we're involved in, where we spend our time. And then, of course, in ourselves and making sure that we're taking care of ourselves, because if if the oxygen mask falls down and we don't put ours on, how are we going to be able to help somebody else, right? That's the best analogy for that one. Okay, so let's get practical then. I have kind of an impact question, I guess, here, but how would your ability to impact the world change if you were able to improve in each of those areas? Would it make a difference? Right? Okay. So it's probably worth thinking about or doing something about. And so I've got two thought leaders that I like that I've kind of pulled some things from, and then also just from my own heart around this topic of how you can practically go about that. So the first one is, this is a TED Talk. You could write it down if you want to. This gentleman's name is Nigel Marsh, Marsh. He has a TED Talk on life balance. And I'm going to share some of the things that he said and give you some of my own take on that. But basically, he's talking about life balance. And I think, this is, to me, it's about getting your leadership skills engaged in all the different areas of your life, and also developing yourself in these different 3 areas that we discussed. So the first one thing he says is that if you're going to make a change, you're going to do something, you got to be honest. Okay, you got to be honest with yourself about who you are now, kind of clearly define that, and then also what the influence of the culture is on you and how you're impacted by that. Okay, because we are. If you listen to the TED Talk, he's got some really funny examples of what that means. To me, it's just like, I just need to be real. I struggle with certain things, right? And I'm really good at others. And how do I approach those things that I want to get, as I'm developing myself in these 3 areas. The next one is take responsibility for the type of life you want to lead, okay? This is, if you talk about the mindset book, we don't blame others. We're not the victim of our circumstances. I went through my list, my goodness gracious, you'd think I was cursed, right? I mean, the list was 80% negative, but I'm telling you right now, I'm blessed. You know what I mean? So it's a lot of it is like taking responsibility for what is given you and what you want your life to look like. Nobody else is going to make it look like that with you. The next one is be careful with your timeline and the time frame in which you judge success or change. Okay, so what do you think? Can you do it tomorrow? Is that going to work? How about after you retire? Okay, so the idea is that be careful about how you decide to go about making these changes. Okay, incremental changes. How does the journey of 1,000 steps begin, right? Or 1,000 miles begins with 1 step, right? How do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? I mean, it really, really does make a difference to just do small incremental things and be conscious of the way that you approach things. I'm going to lose weight. Boom, you go on this crash diet. That's the best example I can think of, and you're just going to change 10 things in your life tomorrow. Forget it. It's not going to work. You have to be realistic about what you're going to do. And the next one is to approach life balance in a balanced way. Okay, that means that don't just focus on personal health. You got to think about relational health. You got to be reading. You've got to be, readers, the book I was just reading that about people that are actually developing, 24 books a year is kind of the low end of people that are really growing and learning. That's a lot of books, okay? The average person reads like 1, okay, on average in our country. So somewhere between 1 and 24, if you want to get yourself. I think one thing about reading or those kinds of things is again just start to do it more, or an incremental change, that kind of thing. So do it in a balanced way though. Don't just focus on personal health. Focus on across all the spectrums if you can. And I'm going to give you some practical ways to do that as well. And then his point is that the small things really matter. He tells a story about his little girl. Just think about those little things in life that those little impacts you have, and you got to remember those, because those are the ones that keep you motivated to keep moving forward and creating impact. Being balanced doesn't mean dramatic upheaval in your life. We just talked about that. And then simple little choices or actions can transform your relationships in society. So small changes that you make can really change the impact that you have. Okay, one little thing, taking that moment or learning that one thing that's going to change that certain behavior that's going to make you just a little bit better. It's going to impact. Okay, it's going to have impact on you and on your world. Okay, so the last thing that I want to share with you is this kind of practical model. Okay, and then we'll have some time for question and answer to at the end. But there's a Wharton professor. Okay, his name is on. If you want to write this guy's name down, you can. He's written quite a bit of stuff, but he's a professor, so I don't know if I like reading all of his stuff. But Stuart Friedman is his name, and I like this model. Stuart Friedman from Wharton. By the way, a trivia question: what famous person that's kind of in the news all the time these days has graduated from Wharton University? I guess lots of famous people graduated from Wharton, but our president graduated from Wharton College, President Trump. So that's a little bit of trivia. Anyway, so this is a 4-step model, and on your outline there, I've listed the 4 steps, but I want to go through them with you. Okay. So this is just a model for change, right? It's like I want to make a change. How do I make a change? Okay. Some people like a real practical thing. Okay. So this is something to think about. And this is an integrated approach. Okay. This isn't a siloed approach. So I'm not just going to focus on one thing. I'm going to try to integrate here. Okay. So the first thing you do is you clarify, whether we talk about values and priorities and what matters, okay? And in the clarify, you can do this in a different ways, but let me give you some suggestions here from Mr. Friedman. The first way is to quantify and qualify the 4 areas of your life. So those 4 areas I talked about, define what the most important to you and place a percentage on each one. So work, family, community, and self. In terms of importance, place a percentage on them. It's kind of like painting a picture of what you want your life to look like, okay? And this is a simplistic thing. You can paint the whole picture, but in a simple way, just put those percentages on it. Okay? Then do an inventory and say, okay, here's where I'm currently spending my time, right? We talked about time being kind of the definer of relationships, time being what defines how we're, if we're devoting time to something, we're typically moving the needle. And then compare those two, okay? The next one is, let me see here, I'm losing my place. Yeah, and then you do the comparison, okay? And then just set that aside. That's going to be part of your analysis for how you're going to do some experimenting later down in step number 3, okay? Where you start to do some experiment. Now you know, okay, well, these are areas where I think I've got opportunity. I'm not spending, I'm not devoted enough time to this area of my life that I want to. Okay. The next thing is identify the significant relationships. We've talked about that. Identifying those things that those people that are important to you and where you want to spend that time. Okay. And then really think about what they do need from you. Okay. Because again, is this about influence, about leadership, and about impact? So what do people really need from you? Okay. A work example would be you've got somebody that's a kind of a new and a junior executive working under you. That person maybe needs more attention than a more seasoned one, right? You think about, okay, how much time and effort do I need to put into this person? With your family, at different ages of your kids, for example, they require different levels of interaction, right? Do teenagers require a little bit more work than 8-year-olds? They do, right? I mean, you gotta be smart because they're gonna try to drive you crazy, right? It's like a battle. versus when they're 8, I mean, they just do what they're told, or I mean, at least it's easier. Let's just put it that way. I don't know if that's a good example, but at least at my house, that's the way it is. So So what do they really need? Assess who you're spending your time with, right? Have you heard that, right? So if you've kind of stratified your relationships and you find yourself spending too much time with these, relationships that are really not healthy and maybe they shouldn't even exist, or maybe they're in a lower strata, those are some things to consider in terms of, trying to figure out how you're going to have time to get your life kind of framed and working the way that you want it to so that you can develop. Okay, and then lastly, not lastly. So now you're going to use this comparison information to inform number 3 now. Okay, now we're going to do some experiment. That's number 3. Okay, so you've kind of clarified your values, you've clarified those things that we talked about, you know what your important relationships are and kind of where you're spending your time now, where you'd like to be spending your time, and now you're going to do some experimenting. And this is the practical thing, okay? And I think we do this to some extent, but let's think about, okay, I want to grow my business at Robb Advisory Group, right? And I also want to spend more time at the gym, okay? Because I need to get physically fit and I want to eat better. And so what do? I decide, okay, I'm going to hire a trainer that I know works at a gym where I know my target audience works out, okay? Okay, now is that an integrated approach to trying to develop myself? So I've done one thing, I've decided to work with a trainer, okay, and I've decided to pick a trainer that I know can get me to a gym where all my business owners are at, because I work with business owners, okay, a lot of business owners work out there, it's kind of my audience is there, or I know this trainer is sought after maybe, and this is a real example, by the way, and you can, and then now all of a sudden I've impacted my physical health, which I know I need to work on, and I've impacted my business in a positive way. I've done some networking, and I can integrate those things, right? Anybody else have some examples that maybe they've tried, or maybe does it spark, oh, hey, I could do something, I could do this. It's a way that I could integrate my life a little bit better.
I think you're a real multitasker if you're networking at the gym. I don't know how to do that.
Oh, there's a lot of multitasking.
Well, let me give you another example. So I was out for coffee doing
There's a
meetings.
lot of networking at the gym.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're a natural networker, you're always networking.
I work at a gym, that's all I do.
Yeah, that's what happens, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just an idea.
It is more the women's locker room, I think, than the men's locker room.
Yeah, well, I've not
So I've
been in
heard. No, you're not.
Maybe that would probably create quite a commotion if I decided
It's kind of funny.
to do it.
That's a whole different subject.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. Well, another one is I had this event in April, you might have heard some of you were there, and I invited my wife to come and do the reception for me, and my daughter was there, okay? And so I brought my family into that, and guess what? I invited my church community to come to the event, right? Gave my pastors some VIP tickets, okay? So it's just a way of expanding your influence and not thinking of your life in silos, okay? Get it integrated, get it together. It's richer. I used to be, go ahead.
Well, last year, I do a lot of running and I joined the 5Ks. I do a lot of 5K runs. And because I do a lot of 5K runs, I do the beer 5K runs. And because I do the beer 5K runs, I attract a different audience of participating in the 5Ks. So that gets people who wouldn't ordinarily be interested in running, because you can walk, run, because they know it's a social event. You get out, you enjoy the day, so you're getting some sunshine, you're getting some activity. You're doing your socializing. Yes, you can or do not have to have a cocktail at the end, but for some people, that's what gets them there. And meanwhile, I'm also talking about I have a wellness business. So it puts me in the right group with the right amount of people. And it's strategic, but it's beautiful. It's fun.
Yeah. It's okay to be, I mean, I wish we were more, I need to be more strategic raising my kids. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to apologize. I mean, these people are benefiting from being around you. So I think that's a really positive thing. You're having impact. So, okay. So the last one is, there's 4 parts to his model. Okay, guess what the last one is? You have to measure it. Okay, you have to measure your progress. I think that's important. We at work, right, in our jobs, the place where we always apply leadership, we do that, right? We have KPIs. So KPIs in these other areas might look a little different. It might be just I just feel better, or I like the way I look in the mirror, or that relationship with my wife has improved because we've consciously done something about it, or whatever it is, or that co-working I've actually decided to spend a little bit more time with that person that I'm developing at work, and it's really paying off. And all of a sudden my plate's a little cleaner, right? There's ways that you can evaluate these things. You can do at work, of course, you have what do you call them? Performance evaluations. Of course, you can use one of those, and that's a really positive thing. So the feedback part of it's a really important component as well. So, and those 4 things are listed there. You can look up Friedman's stuff if you want to, but I like those 2 kind of practical models, if you will, around that. So that is my idea of integrated leadership. If you interact with us at Rev, that's our differentiator. Really, is we're interested in working with business owners that get it, that they want to increase their effectiveness not just at work but in life. Okay, and we help them do all of that. Okay, it's not just about making money to burn in the fireplace at night. It's about creating impact in a life that has meaning and matters. So, thank you very much. And if you have any questions you want to talk about the topic that you think sparked? Lisa asked me to do Q&A. I don't always do Q&A because I do some interaction in between, but
Oh, yeah.
I want to do a giveaway too, so we've got a few minutes.
Well, did you get the business cards?
Yeah, so what we do is we'll pass this around, put your business card in for a drawing. I'm still skeptical whether there's anybody watching on that screen, but if you are, so here's what we're gonna do. Here's what we're gonna do. I've got 2 books that I'm gonna give away today. I'll tell you what they are, but the first book I'm gonna give away just for this room, okay? So if you're on the camera, I'm sorry you can't win that book. But the other book, I've written my email address up here. If you send me an email, I'm gonna tear up strips and I'm gonna have my 7-year-old daughter, draw out your name, and I'm gonna give away the other book that way. Obviously, I am very interested in connecting with people. I like to network. I'd like to expand my direct and peripheral relationships, if you want to call them that, and hopefully create some new significant ones. So that's important to me as well. So since there's not a lot of questions, this first book I'm going to give away to the room. This copy was given to me by the president of Tradition Capital Bank, who's a wonderful guy. The author is Ward Brem. Anybody know who Ward Brem is? Ever heard of him? He's a local guy, very famous. He's got his pictures with Bono and President Bush and a lot of different people in here. Very influential man, very astute business guy who went to Africa and had a paradigm change. Okay, and it's really a great book about bigger than me. And then the subtitle is Just When I Thought I Had All the Answers, Got You Some Questions. So it's a great book. He's a local author. And so I'm going to give this away today. And so go ahead. Why don't you guys just drop right back there.
Drum roll.
Mine feels like there.
There we go. It is.
It's you. You drew your own name.
Of course.
Oh, it's not okay.
It's Forrest. It's Forrest.
I saw the beard.
Okay, you go, Forrest.
Yeah, okay. And then the other one we're going to draw via email. So my email is rob@rev-advisors.com. It's up on the board here. I don't know if you can see that on the screen, but I want that everybody to be able to. And so Ken Ritter Spa, who's also an Office Center member, and I, we have a deal. So he deal on these books. I leave this little picture in here because he's an EOS implement. This book is Traction. This is for small and medium-sized businesses. We actually have another Traction implementer in the room as well. I don't want to. It's just a great process, okay? And there's lots of folks out there that can help you with it. But when it comes to Rev members, we talk about this particular process a lot. And so this is a great book. If you haven't read it, you should. And I'm going to take it with me today, and then I will mail it to you. So email me your name and a place for me to send this book, and it'll be yours. Okay? That's it. Thank you so much. Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right. Thank you so much, Rob. How many golden nuggets did everybody get? Lots and lots.
Lots and lots.
Woohoo! All right, and now I get to talk about a little bit of what's going on at Office Centers for August, guys. It's co-working month, and we have an event every day. So we're going to be busy. So we want you to check our website and join us for the tons of fun. But it's going to be, there's certain things I want everybody to know. It's Mondays. Every Monday is going to be BOGO Monday. So during co-working month, that means that any time if you sign on to a full-time space or a virtual space, you pay for a month and get a month for free. So that's every Monday in the month of August. Every Friday in the month of August, we're gonna have happy hours. And it's also going to be, what's it gonna be on Friday? It's going to be Work-Free Friday. So you can come in, work for free at any of our locations all day long and stay for happy hour, beverages and treats with us on Fridays. And this coming Friday is going to be Yappy Hour at our Woodbury location. It's dog friendly, so our owner will be there with her dog and lots of other dogs. Then we're gonna kick off, it's Dilly Day next Wednesday, which is the first. On the second, we're raising the roof at Park Office Center here for our hour-long 9 o'clock to 10 o'clock. Then on the third, like I said, Yappy Hour. The ninth is the big one. We're going to have our grand opening at Woodbury. So expecting a couple hundred people, and it's gonna be lots of fun with food truck and music and beverages and networking and woohooing. Imagine that. Let's see, then I said we're gonna have happy hours every Friday. So at France on 8/10 and August 10th, International, August 17th, down at the North Loop on the 24th. And then just a few other highlights for the month. We have Melissa Long at Woodbury is going to be speaking on new tax changes on the 7th. The 14th, our resident Google expert Ben Tice is going to be speaking on SEO and Google Analytics. 24th is the 8th annual Fishing for Life tournament at White Bear Lake. So there's a fishing tournament for any of you that want to enjoy something like that on a beautiful day. Other than that, our next, and he's in the house, so we're gonna drum roll. Our next Power Lunch is gonna be at Woodbury. It's gonna be our very first Power Lunch there. And none other than Peter Beaumont is going to be our speaker. Woo! He's gonna talk about starting strong and finishing big. Who doesn't want to do that?
Yes.
And growing a thriving business. Do you want to add anything to that for us, Peter?
No,
Okay, but it's gonna be.
Keep them intrigued.
Keep them intrigued. Okay, perfect. It's going to be on the 23rd, however, so we're doing it a week earlier than we usually do, but join us for that. And otherwise, thanks so much for being here, and thanks so much to you, Rob.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for that.
Everybody have a good day, and woo-hoo. Woo!